Well, hello, my name is John Burkhauser, and this is the third installment video of our course that we present entitled Caring for the Addicted Through Discipleship. If you can see, this is the cover of the companion booklet that we give out when we do the workshop face-to-face. As we're recording this on June 18th, we are still in the global pandemic, and while we are meeting some as churches and gatherings and groups and such, we haven't been able to meet lately to present our workshop. We had a few scheduled that we've rescheduled or haven't rescheduled yet. We postponed up in West Virginia and in Baltimore County, Maryland. We'll be rescheduling. If you'd like more information, you can go to our website, starroseministries.com, and on the lower right-hand side of the homepage, you'll see links to these videos, but also a form where you can fill out and get more information about the workshop. I mentioned this is the third installment. We're actually covering the second objective, the second out of four. The first video was an introduction. The second was objective 1. Today is objective 2, and the title is Defining the Need for Care and Discipleship. Very briefly, the reason for that title is we wanted to be able to separate out the understanding that it isn't just a matter of giving advice, giving counsel, giving suggestions, offering information to people. In our workshop, in our ministry work, we believe that in some way, shape, or form, engaging in the life of someone, walking with them, caring for them, as we say here, and providing discipleship. Now, the listener of this video, the viewer of this video may not offer that themselves, although this workshop is offered to folks who sense a call towards that or would like to provide that in some way, fulfill that role. But certainly it's to understand that the individual that you care for, the individual in your family who is around you, at your church, whatever it might be, would need more than simply advice and counsel and suggestions and those sorts of things. Objective 1, just a quick recap, was defining addiction as a spiritual issue, and we were just trying to really convey that it's almost always, if not always, something deeper than simply, and I don't say that lightly, simply meaning it's not just a chemical addiction, not just a body that needs a substance to survive. It goes deeper than that to a spiritual condition, spiritual issue, and we addressed that then. Today, again, we're looking at defining the need for care and discipleship. If we were to be meeting face-to-face, as we hope to do with some of you in the not-too-distant future, this would be a course that has dialogue and also has some demonstrations, some whiteboard illustrations, some short videos we would show, and also some role-play exercises. None of that is going to transpire in this. This, again, is just a promo to give you an idea. But there's a section in the book of James, chapter 2, verses 14 through 17. It says this: what good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can that faith save him? If a brother or sister is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food, and one of you says to them, "Go in peace, be warm and filled," without giving them the things needed for the body, what good is that? So also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. Now, really, the writer here is referring to the faith of the individual and using the illustration of talking with someone and offering them suggestions, good, but not actually helping them with that. A young lady I met with for a while said to me once, and others have said it, that people are telling me what to do, but no one's really showing me how to do it. And so that's really the essence of what we're looking at. So in our booklet, again, this companion booklet that we pass out, we have a few thoughts written down and then a section for notes. We're defining care and discipleship as meeting with someone at their point of need, understanding what it is they need, again, spiritually, if you will, and practically caring for them, providing what they need, walking with them, and helping point them in the proper direction. So it does involve certainly counsel and suggestions and recommendations and all that. It just isn't that alone. So what we're going to look at today for the moments we have is a bit of an understanding of why people may not do what they should be doing and what we think they should be doing and what maybe even we and they know they should be doing, or why they may be doing things repetitively that get them in trouble, that give them problems. In the recovery teaching, recovery culture, it would be a little bit of a broad brush, I think, understandably, but can be dangerous at times, or at least not fully comprehensive at times, where people just assume that it's the addict in you that makes you compulsive. It's the addict that makes you just do the things without thinking. It's the addict that causes you to ignore what you need to address. And I want to suggest that while that's not a wrong statement often, it can be a not fully descriptive statement. And let me explain to you why. So we found, and I've studied for the last number of years, not deeply, but just a bit into the personalities and temperaments of people, and really have uncovered a lot of valuable information about myself that has helped me, but also better understanding others. Again, what we're trying to do is better understand others here so we can better help them. So a couple of examples of how a personality or temperament can affect someone or give a wrong impression of someone. If an introverted person is looking for help, and we're trying to help somebody who is introverted, such as myself, a high introvert, and we recommend they go to meetings. Certainly in recovery, it's going to be AA, NA, Celebrate Recovery, Reformers Unanimous, the sort of Christian recovery meetings. Good as those things can be and helpful as they can be very, very overwhelming for an introverted person. I didn't do well with those environments. I struggled desperately in them. I had to go to them, and I went to them. That was all that was around, and it was mandated by the court system for me. But I didn't do very well. And so when I found very small, intimate gatherings, which are there, some if you find them in the right places, and then eventually I did need to get into those things, and I did, and I learned to have a comfort level to some degree. But early on, it was very, very, well, it was counterproductive for me, but I had no other choice, so I did it. So if you're meeting with someone, you come across someone who would be a strong introvert, you might not be so quick just to recommend they go to meetings. You might help a ministry like Staris or a discipleship ministry within your church or somewhere to help with them on a one-to-one level. An extroverted person might not do so well if you're a Christian and you say to them, just go home and spend time with the Lord, just get alone with Him and listen to Him. They don't know how to do that. They are very overwhelmed with being alone. Sometimes the shame and the guilt of the past can rise up, and just being alone, period, is hard for them. So one of the things I've done with some individuals was suggest that they go to a library where they can study their Bible, read, pray, and they're not alone. Now, there's people around them. They're not interacting with everyone, but they don't need to be, and they shouldn't be if they're going to be alone, so to speak. And sometimes there can be business, but libraries still are fairly quiet, not as quiet as they once were, but still can be. So it can be a place where they can go and have some buzz, have some people around, have some activity around. They don't feel quite so isolated, but yet they can spend time reading and praying and studying and that sort of thing. So that's just one example, but the point of it is to tell a high extrovert or an extrovert just to go and be alone with the Lord, or just to be alone and do something alone, that might be quite overwhelming for them early on. Certainly we do believe eventually they need to get to that place, but we need to help them get to that place. The other thing is, we're going to look, as we close today, we're going to look at the 4 temperaments, and I'll explain that further, but just as a illustration to start with, there's one of the extroverted temperaments is called Sanguine, and that's the person who often acts before they think. Well, they can often look as though they are still getting high, because one day they might be cordial and they might really agree with you, they might make eye contact, and they might be fun to be with or okay to be with. The next day, if they're in a down cycle in their temperament, they might be not looking at you right, they might be a bit distant, and you might assume they're getting high again or something. Also, they can run the risk of being diagnosed as bipolar. We're very careful that we're not offering any kind of medical diagnosis, but just initially we want to make sure that somebody isn't simply exhibiting their temperament and their personality, and that's causing them to seem disinterested, whatever it might be. A phlegmatic is one of the introverted temperaments. Again, we're going to define these in a minute as we close. A phlegmatic one might be labeled as codependent or weak. Often mothers or fathers, parents often who are practicing what the recovery culture calls tough love, there might be sort of a group just saying to them, you have to kick them out, you have to ask them to leave, and they might not sense that that's really what to do. Now, it could be their temperament, they just might not have the wherewithal to do so, but it could be that if they're a Christian, that God has spoken to them and let them know. And I speak from experience because my mother was in that category, and she did not believe that she was to kick me out. She didn't, and I'm thankful for that. She had every right to do so. A lot of people would have, if she had been seeking advice back then. I'm not sure she did much. It wasn't a lot around many years ago, but not as available as today. But had she been seeking advice, I'm sure that would have been it. Tough love, kick them out. I really don't think I would have survived had she done so, because I know me, and she knew me a bit. So a phlegmatic person might come across as being labeled codependent or weak. So we need to be careful not to assume things of people automatically and just have one blanket pathway for each person. So we're going to close today looking at the 4 temperaments briefly, and let me explain to you why I find them to be helpful. In the workshop, we would go into it a bit deeper and have give and take and illustrate it with Bible characters and such. We won't be doing that today. Just going to share a little bit. There's a book by an author, Tim LaHaye. Some of you might remember him from the Left Behind series. He was a co-author. And it was a book that came out in the 70s called The Spirit-Controlled Temperament. And he looks at the temperaments. They started way before that. They were identified way before that. But he looks at them in a biblical fashion quite effectively, quite meaningfully. And again, we would reference that at our workshop. You can certainly get that book off Amazon or any bookstore online. But it's a great book. And so the information we pull is a lot from his book and from some other sources. But their traits, their temperaments are traits that subconsciously affect our behavior. The way I say it, I was talking to a friend the other day, when push comes to shove, when we are pressured, when we feel like we don't have a lot of options, we revert to our temperament. We do. I don't care who you are, how strong you are in the Lord. We don't revert as quickly or as deeply if we're strong and healthy, but we still do. And so, especially when somebody is early on coming away from addictions or still in addiction, trying to get off of it, they're going to be very, very prone to responding based on their temperament. So here are the 4, looking at them. The first one is sanguine. I brought that up already. That's an extroverted temperament. It's someone who is warm and lively, fun-loving. Feelings rather than reflective thoughts predominate to form their decisions. So Peter would be the Apostle Peter in the Bible would be one who would be in that category. Chopped off the soldier's ear in reaction to his wanting to arrest Jesus. And then thinking about it and having Jesus, rebuke him if you will. But you might be thinking of some people right now. They're very quick to make decisions before they think them through. And you might say to them, we just need to think this through a while. And they're making a decision. And so you're thinking they're not listening to me or whatever it might be. So understanding that might be their temperament can help you to understand why they don't respond, why they're not responding, why they're kind of just doing their own thing. One of the other traits I mentioned a few moments ago was that they'll be right with you one day and the next day they'll be against you. It can be very confusing. So that's one of the temperaments that's helpful to recognize. Choleric is the second extroverted temperament. They're quick. They thrive on activity. That's some of the people I mentioned. They need to have things going on. You tell them to just go sit still and get before the Lord and talk to Him or get to a quiet place. They just can't do that. They can't do that. And it says they are practical and strong-willed. Think they know what to do, what's best. They are often self-sufficient and independent. They tend to be decisive and opinionated, quick to make decisions for themselves and for others, sometimes without being asked to do so. If you're a helper watching this and you want to help others, You might just be telling them, here's what you need to do, and make all the decisions. They may be all the good decisions. They may be the things that the individual eventually does. But early on, doing that often just runs over them and pushes them away. So for the addict, for the person struggling who is a choleric, they think they know what's best, and you get offended because they think they know what's best. It's helpful to understand that if they're of that temperament, they're going to default back to that mood. Well, there are two introverted temperaments, and the first one is melancholy. I would be a strong melancholy. I would be the two introverted temperaments, melancholy first and phlegmatic second. But the melancholy is introverted, of course, analytical, self-sacrificing, gifted, perfectionist type. It sounds like, boy, that's pretty good, but part of what that means is it can be very hard to make decisions, very hard to take steps because it all has to be just right. And you can see where that could be a problem. There's good things in that, but also it could be. Very sensitive, emotional nature. Very sensitive, hurt very easily. Very, very easy to detach and fold up and retreat to my room, so to speak. I don't do those things today because I'm healthier and healthier in the Lord, but early on, I didn't know it. I didn't know why. And so it would have been helpful. That's why we're presenting these things. It would have been helpful for my wife, my family to understand this a little more. I've had parents and spouses say to me since we've been presenting the workshop that that's helped them a lot to understand, to not chase that person, not to try to force in, but to learn a little bit more about how they can help them. We would do that in the workshop. It's often referred to as the black or dark temperament. For years, I thought that I just woke up with the glass half empty because maybe there was still sin in my life. Well, you know, sin that was unrecognized and unrepented of. Also, I thought maybe I just drugged myself because I was on heavy drugs for 15 out of the 20 years. And maybe I just wrecked myself to a point where I'll never be on the bright side again. But when I learned that it was my temperament, I thought that was very helpful. And it helped me to be okay with understanding it's part of who I am. What it does is causes me to maybe seek the Lord a little more quickly in the morning than others might need to. So that's what I do in response to that. But meeting with someone in that place, I don't say to them, just cheer up, just smile, just look on the bright side. That doesn't help a melancholy at all. In fact, it goes the opposite. It makes us feel worse. The last temperament is phlegmatic. They're calm, easygoing, never seem to get ruffled no matter what the circumstances. They have a high boiling point, seldom explode in anger or laughter, but keep their emotions under control. It would be a secondary for me. Problems can arise when they assume blame for things that aren't their fault. Again, as I mentioned earlier, they can often be accused, if you will, or labeled as codependent. And that doesn't help the phlegmatic at all. To say you're as sick as the addict because you won't make a move, well, that makes them feel like there's something wrong with them. And it could be, and sometimes they do need to step up and make moves. But we need to help them get to that place, not just tell them to do it, because they can't. It's not built into them. It's not the way they're designed. And so in relationships, we can push people and be telling them to do the things that they just can't bring themselves to do. If, on the other side, the addict is the phlegmatic, when I have guys that want me to go through a character defects list, they often bring that from a recovery type of environment. I don't do that with folks. The last thing, those of you who have followed our videos and heard me speak before, I often look at Psalm 139. And David in Psalm 139, the last couple of verses, he says, "Search me and know my heart, and see if there's any offensive way in me, lead me in the way everlasting." He's asking God to search him. Well, that's verses 23 and 24. The previous 22 verses, he spends dwelling on God's love for him, God's knowledge of him, God's presence in his life, God's strength in his life. Then he says, so with an individual, any individual, but certainly one who would be melancholy, phlegmatic, we want to be able to help them, not just pie in the sky, it's all good and all that sort of thing, but we want to help them understand that help is available for them, and we want to be part of that help or help them find part of that help. And then we can have them look at the things that hold them back, that they might address them and work on them. So I hope that's been helpful. We're going to have objective number 3 and objective number 4 following. We've been trying to do a week or 10 days between them. And again, click on our website. Go to starsministries.com. We have a front sort of cover. If you scroll down to our actual front page, you'll see on the bottom right corner is a link to the workshop videos, these videos. But also, if you click on more info, get info, I think it says, you'll be taken to a page where you can fill out a form and you can send that to us, and we will get back to you. And we can talk to you as an individual. We can set up to talk about the workshop, a little more about what it entails, and we can schedule a workshop in your area as well. So thank you for your time, and thanks for watching. I hope that you'll go to our website and our YouTube page and learn more about our ministry work and see what we're doing. Thank you.